I call the honourable member for Hughes.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I'd just like to pick up a few points raised by the member for Gellibrand, I hope it is. Firstly, that the claim that the coalition has somehow drastically cut Australia's foreign aid. Firstly, let's just go through a first few of the facts. In the 15 months prior to the election, the 2013 election, the former Labor government, that's you guys, you actually cut $7.5 billion from the aid budget. You also diverted $750 million from the aid budget to pay for your border protection blowout. So the actual third largest recipient of Australia's aid was actually the Gillard government. So for members of the Labor Party to come in here and to lecture us saying we should spend more about aid, Deputy Speaker, is really a step too far. Even Bob Carr, the former Foreign Minister, has made it very clear that you cannot run an aid budget on borrowings. And that's what the previous Labor government did, Deputy Speaker. They borrowed all this money to generously give it away. And you know what? They borrowed most of the money from overseas. So the Labor government's idea of a foreign aid project was to borrow money from overseas to then give it away overseas. And we wonder why we had to come in and make some sensible decisions. As Bob Carr said, we cannot run a foreign aid budget on borrowed money. We have to get our budget back into balance before we can do anything of increasing our foreign aid. And when it comes to talking about our foreign aid expenditure, one thing I think we need to look at is to reclassify some of our defence expenditure. We have our new helicopter landing docks, the HMAS Canberra and Adelaide. These vessels, although all that expenditure is classified as defence, effectively these vessels will work in foreign aid and emergency situations, exactly what we recently saw in Fiji. It's the costs coming out of the pockets of the Australian taxpayer to pay for those vessels, and those vessels are an enormous boost to provide foreign aid when there is a natural disaster. Now, Deputy Speaker, the other thing that we need to also make sure we're very clear about aid, and this is where the member I'm not sure the member's name, that his seat, Hindmarsh I think it is, that moved this motion, he talked about here, point 5. Nations that were once aid recipients, such as China and South Korea, now have fewer people living in extreme poverty and are now major economies and trading partners. That may be true, but they didn't become successful because we were giving them foreign aid. They became successful and lifted millions, hundreds of millions of people out of poverty because they went down the track of free markets and free enterprise system. And it was even, I think, the member there for Kingston Smith. Maybe one of your mates, Bono, I'm sure, who for the years has been a good leftist. He said recently, aid is just a stopgap. It is commerce and entrepreneurial capitalism, you may like to write that down, entrepreneurial capitalism that take more people out of poverty than aid. And that is very true, Deputy Speaker. That is what makes the biggest difference to people of poverty in the world. If they, rather than giving them handouts, Deputy Speaker, if they go down the track, and if they open up their economies, if they take advantage of entrepreneurial capitalism, that will lift more people out of poverty than any particular handouts. Now, Deputy Speaker, when it comes to what we can perhaps do to people in the third world suffering from poverty, one of the great problems that people in the third world face at the moment is the issue of indoor air pollution. In fact, Deputy Speaker, we often talk about indoor air pollution, and this is where people living in the third world simply don't have reliable and cost-effective electricity. So they are forced to cook and to heat their homes. They are forced to burn dung and wood and twigs. And, Deputy Speaker, that causes millions of deaths every year. In fact, the World Health Organization has said there are 531,000 children, that's over 500,000 children, under the age of 5, the majority of girls that die from indoor air pollution because they do not have access to low-cost electricity. And yet, Deputy Speaker, some of the policies that we have that are preventing people in the third world from getting access to low-cost electricity is directly responsible for those hundreds of thousands of deaths.